So that was something that I took with me for the rest of my career. I was just like, why not just do it? Because if it's terrible, you can always do something else. But why not try? And then the second piece of it that I took with me was how negatively people reacted to the security team and the security design review. And that really shaped how I practiced security. Is two things, which is don't be afraid to try new stuff. Just do it. Stop complaining. Complain later after you've tried it, after you've really tried it. And then the second piece is don't be that security person that people don't want to invite into the project. Like, how can you just think of yourself as a project leader, a project coordinator who happens to have good security requirements that make sense, and then weave that into your project and get it done? My advice to all security people is talk to your sales team. What deals are they trying to land? Especially what enterprise deals, what European deals.
Hi, Coleen. Welcome to Fearless Podcast. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I just want to give a brief background of you to our listeners who might have not heard of you, but I'm sure they have. Bay Area is relatively small. So Coleen actually been a security leader for over 25 years and in cybersecurity space for 18 years. You've built and led security teams at companies like Segment, that was later acquired by Twilio. Mm-hmm. And now you advise early stage startups on product development, security, and growth. And you're also passionate about using technology to create a better future. And we can't wait to dive into the conversation, how you started, how you got into this space in the first place. And yeah, so maybe tell us where you started.
Okay, so that's probably going to take up the bulk of this because I think my other stuff is way succinct. But I think maybe the reason why I might spend a little bit longer on it is to encourage people out there who are thinking about a career change and they think, I'm too old, I don't know enough, I didn't major in that in college, I didn't go to college or whatever it is. And I'm here to say, like, you can do whatever the heck you want. Honestly, that's this life. So back in 2004, so many years ago, I was a relatively young project coordinator, project manager, and I was working at like an early fintech company. And so that meant we were helping people with like bad credit get loans so they can purchase a home. Mm-hmm. And I had the fortune at the time, I thought it was misfortune, but life turns out better than you think it is. It starts off and you're like, why is it like this? And it turns out the best thing ever. So I had the fortune/misfortune of working with like a more senior project leader who was very disinterested in his work. Okay. I mean, this guy took me under his wing and he was like, I can give you the short way to get to the end and be the best project manager ever. I was like, great. And he's like, bye, taking on 2 of my projects. And he's like, here's the thing. My broker is only available from this time to this time. And I like to talk to him like 3 times a week. And it happens to coincide with the 3 times a week that these projects are at. So I need you to take them for me. It's like, they'll run themselves. You have great people on there and it'll be fine. So I take on his projects and he literally just gets on the phone with this broker, buy, sell. Yeah. And go to the conference room and I'm like relatively new and it's great to have like a vendor who knew what they were doing, very technical. And we had a really great developer, QA person, and things were sort of like, queued up to go. And the essence of it was like what we were doing from like looking back now on a security perspective is how will you get a risk score on a borrower to know whether they might default on the loan within 1 or 2 years or not. Mm-hmm. Well, you need to look at all of their data. Mm-hmm. You look at like bank deposit information, their spending habits, credit score and credit behavior, just all of that information that goes into getting a loan. If you've ever applied for a loan for a home, they know everything about you. If that loan file gets lost, you're hosed, Yeah. There's no amount of credit monitoring that's really going to help you. It's just, it's a nightmare. And so, it was supposed to be a really simple thing. We take our like a collection of these loan files and then we send them over to the vendor who was on site and helping us set that thing up. Then they would do their analysis with their proprietary software, send back over a risk score, and then we could add that and package it and just be like, this loan is more valuable because it looks like the person is not going to default on the loan. Mm-hmm. This one is less valuable. It's, that kind of thing. So super exciting from a business perspective. I was great. I was like happy to dive in. And maybe about 1.5 weeks into the project, it was going awesome. And I hear knock at the conference room door, which is weird, right? You're in a conference room and when someone's knocking, it's very disorienting. Like, that's strange. Let's ignore that. Yeah. Eventually I get up and open the door and there's this, new person I've never seen before. And he has his hand out and he goes, hi, my name is Ian. Are you Coleen? And I was like, yes. Yeah. And he's like, I'm a security engineer and I'm here to do a security design review on your project. And I was like, I know what security, design, and review are, but what are all of those three things together? And I look over my shoulder back into the room and I look at the developer and the QA person and the vendor, and all of them were like, no, Coleen. And I was like, nice to meet you, Ian. Come on in. And they were like, oh God, what is wrong with you? So we bring him in and he's all, hey, I'm just going to observe, maybe slide over a copy of the requirements document. And I'll just quietly go through them and listen to what you guys are doing. So at the end of the meeting, like he'd already gone through a significant amount of the stuff and he listened. And after everyone left, he goes, can I talk to you? And I'm like, sure. What's up? He's like, so did this vendor go through any sort of vetting? I'm like, I don't know, like the business signed them up. The PMO accepted them in and it got attached to this project and we're doing it. And he's like, but did it go through a security review? I was like, I don't know what that is. He's like, cool. He's like, okay, so basically I looked through all of these requirements. It looks like you're taking this sensitive information and you're transferring it over FTP. I was like, that's true. To a vendor, which we haven't done a security review for. And then who knows how they're protecting it and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, right. And he's like, okay, so I've marked everything up in red. And it was just pages and pages of like, you did this wrong, did this wrong, did this wrong. And I'm all, hey, dude. So I was in Southern California. So it was a lot of dude and bro. Happy to do things right. But this is the first we've ever heard from the security team, because before they were just network engineers, like pushing traffic, or security guards. So here you are showing up. And so we don't have a roadmap. I'm all, where are the policies? He goes, I'm getting around to making some policies. I'm all, cool. So since it feels like you're just making it up as you go, can you please, instead of just saying you're wrong, just say, instead of doing it this way, do these things instead. And how you know it will be good is it will meet these requirements. I'm like, can you do that? I'm like, I gave him requirements to give me requirements back. And so he's like, I can do that. So he started writing in like, do this instead, do this instead, do this instead. And he goes, I'd like to be on your 3 meetings a week that you have for this project to watch the progress and be there and answer questions. So I added him. And then I got a lot of flack from the rest of the team. They were just like, drop him off at the meeting, change the room, change the date, change the recurrence, get rid of this dude. We don't want him, because he's basically going to say we can't do this project and we have to do this project. And I was like, wow, security people really have a bad reputation. I'm like, look, guys, I'm all, what if it were our data? Like someday we're going to buy a home and we're going to have this treasure trove of data that we're going to give over to a company. Wouldn't we want them to do like a minimum baseline, And they were like, oh God. And I can't.
Why you're going to be so nice.
Yes. But what's so hilarious is the team said, you're so naive. This is 2004. You're so naive. Everyone's data is already compromised. So why even try? And I was like, but that's like saying, since we're all going to die someday, why exercise? Why take vitamins? Why sleep? Why be healthy? I'm like, that's super defeatist. But, I'm like, come on, let's do this. And so what I told this Ian guy is like, look, they all hate you. Okay. And so I want to help you, but we need to get this project done. So don't just jump in and say, that's wrong. You need to say like, hey, instead of doing it this way, like, let's try doing it that way. Let's just quickly do that and see if that makes a difference. And so changing FTP to SFTP, he explained to me FTP is an unencrypted channel that, your unencrypted data is going to go across and anybody can intercept those packets and read them. I'm all, oh, cool, learn something. And also, even if you had a username and password, it wouldn't matter. Everything's in the clear. And I was like, oh, smart. And then he's like, and then to like be doubly safe, why don't we encrypt the things before we put them on the wire, just in case something were to happen? I was like, oh, encryption here and encryption there. And he's like, how long do these files live once they go over to the vendor? I'm like, well, they need a certain amount of hours to do the analysis and they send us back an answer. He's like, great. How long do they need? And so we whittled down the amount of time that something needed to be exposed. We tried to plug all the holes where something was exposed with encryption and limiting access and all that. And I learned a lot. And so what I ended up doing, because I'm like, I bet this guy's going to show up to more of these meetings where next project he's going to be here. So let me just turn this thing that he's done into a template that the rest of the PMO can use. Yeah, basically by the end of the project, we had shored up everything that he was really like very worried about. And I even did I'm like, you wanted me to review this vendor for security things. I'm like, where's the template? He goes, great question. Just give me an afternoon. I'm gonna make one. And so he just made one up on the fly, gave it to me. And he said, these are the types of answers that I want. Here is an example of a good answer. So sat with the vendor. And even though the vendor hated him, we all got along. And I'm like, let's just do this, because why don't you just be the gold standard? And then the company will never bother you again for this kind of stuff. And it's true, because then I became an approved vendor after that. So we did all that. Everything was in the books. Went back to the person who was always day trading and said, hey, by the way, I templatized like what, what a secure project looks like. And you can take this back to the PMO. Like I'm happy to do a presentation of what my experience was and how PMO, we need to change. Yeah. He's like, yeah, okay, I'll do that. However that happened, that was fine. And so I asked Ian, as we were wrapping up the project, how do you think it went? And he goes, basically, you guys went from like an F- to an A-. I'm all, A-? He's like, yeah, there's always a couple of things that we could have done better. I was like, what a jerk. Well, whatever. I'm all thinking to myself, good thing I never have to see this dude again. A couple weeks later, corporate America, as it were back then, were all about like layoffs, reorgs. And so we had this all hands where I saw him up on stage because he was going to speak. And I'm all, that's interesting. And there was a big screen behind him with an org chart. And there was the old org chart and then the new org chart. And his name was right on top of the security org. And he was, basically reporting to like the CIO. Mm-hmm. And he's like, hey, everyone, it's a pleasure for me to be here. I'm the newest member of the security team. I worked at Accenture, blah, 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 blah. And long story short, I'm the new leader of security. And everyone's like groaning, right? Oh, God. And he's like, and I intend to fix all the things that have, not been addressed before. We need to do the basics well. Let's get policies that are common sense and get you understanding what they are. Practices. We're going to, do security training, even for developers and network engineers. And he's like, and I'm looking to grow the team. He's like, I think it's helpful if you've been a practitioner in an area that's not security because you know how the business works. And he's like looking out on the crowd. And I found out that he talked to a developer and converted that person. And he talked to a network engineer and converted that person and a project coordinator and he converted that person. Essentially, he said, if you're somebody who gets shit done and you like to get it done right, and we've interacted before, I'm going to contact you and try to get you to come work for me. And I was like, oh no, don't want to work for that dude. And sure enough, he asked me out to lunch and I was like, I got to break it down for you. Nobody likes you. Nobody likes security. They see you coming and they want to like disappear. And like, why would I want to go work for a team that is regarded this way? He goes, because we need to change that. And he's like, we're going to get people who are doers, who actually know how to go from bad to good and who've had like a pattern of success. And he's like, we're going to fold them into our security team. So we're not just going to be people who are like jumping out of the bushes and going, you did your thing wrong. It's like, this is someone who knows how to go from A to B. And that's you. And I was like, I do not have this background. I know how to get stuff done. I don't know how to be a security person. He's like, I'll train you. And so I tentatively agreed. I'm like, I'll do 1 year. I'm like, but I'm going to be the worst person on your team. I know the least. He's like, you'll be fine. Just be open. And so he put me through an offsite SANS training. I went somewhere back east, all a blur, but it was a week of cryptography, network security, Windows security, Unix security, legal regulations and compliance, application security. My brain was mush after it. So it was the classes, it was the labs, and then it was a test. And so I passed the test, come back completely shell-shocked. And he goes, how are you feeling? I'm all, I think my brain melted. I don't think this is for me. And he's like, you know what? How about instead of just letting you think about what you read and learned, I'm going to deploy you to each one of our security sub-departments. And you'll be the lowest rung on the ladder there for however many months it takes for you to get up to speed, and you're going to help them with their particular discipline in security. You're going to learn by doing. And I was like, oh God, does the torture ever end? So he was like, I think the easiest is going to be governance, risk, and compliance. There was one part-time person who was like E&Y person who was lent out, work with that person. And I saw that this guy was copying and pasting policy and procedure that had nothing to do with how we did business, or even like just a lot of the stuff was non-applicable. And I was like, how do you expect anyone to read it? That doesn't even apply to us. And so I go to Ian, is this what you consider governance, risk, and compliance? Just like paper everywhere? And he's like, no, that's why you're going to come in and fix it. And so I had to painstakingly go through everything from like, wear your badge, don't tailgate, to don't share passwords, don't share logins, how to, deactivate accounts, how to properly activate accounts, how to properly scope things, what good network security looks like, what good application security looks like. So that was super painful and did all that. And then once we published something and he goes, now you can leave and you can go to IT security. And I was like, oh, what's that? And so the IT security was at the time was deploying antivirus. It was like Norton antivirus back in the day. And as the low person in there, my job was to go to all the people's desktops, and anybody who wasn't getting like the new version of it, I had to go troubleshoot it and figure it out and like set it up. And so when that deployment was all done and we got to the point where basically all the clients were reporting in and things were operating as he was like, you're too comfortable. I'm going to put you to the next thing. And then it was network security. And then we had, I had to learn some network forensics, which was not fun. Then he did the same thing for application security. And I was like, man, just as I started to feel comfortable and hit my stride and feel like I was really giving back, he would rip me out of that context and put me into another one where I knew nothing about that discipline other than what I had read. So it was a year of extreme discomfort. And I feel like I only got like 80% of the way through in each of the disciplines I wanted to get good at. But he's like, you're never going to know it all. Most security people are overly, they have like this over expertise in one area and then they know nothing about the other areas at all. And he's like, that's not going to help me. I need you to have a good feel for each of these areas. And I'm like, but why? Why? He's all, because someday you're going to be a great security leader. I was like, no, man. I'm all, why is it? Every time I talk to you, it's only bad news layered by more bad news and like more bad plans. But he was just, his tutelage, which was really just like taking me out of one pool and throwing me into another one and being like, see, you can swim. Good job. That was a good exercise for me because it made me realize like, you don't have to go to school for a thing. You don't have to have this innate, like, oh, I'm great at whatever this is. Therefore, I'm just going to go into that particular job. When you're forced to do it and you're like, well, I might as well be as good as I possibly can be. Even if I fail out, let's see what I can learn. And then he did the same thing for like once I had a good fill for all that, he made me, I guess, like I would go to the different departments whenever somebody was on vacation and then like fill in. And he's like, yeah, I think you're ready for management training. I'm all, bro, not ready for management training. Forced me to do that. And then there was a team that was really struggling. And he's like, everything that you just learned in your management training class, you get to practice here with these guys. And so I feel like my whole career in security has been that. It's been me saying, no, I don't want this. Can't I just do this other thing? And he said, you can be comfortable anytime. You can always like get out of the deep end of the pool, climb out and go sit in the sun chairs and relax anytime you want. But why are you going to just spend all your time on deck? Why don't you actually just jump in? So that was something that I took with me for the rest of my career. I was just like, why not just do it? Because if it's terrible, you can always do something else. But why not try? And then the second piece of it that I took with me was how negatively people reacted to the security team and the security design review. And that really shaped how I practiced security. Is two things, which is don't be afraid to try new stuff. Just do it. Stop complaining. Complain later after you've tried it, after you've really tried it. And then the second piece is don't be that security person that people don't want to invite into the project. Like, how can you just think of yourself as a project leader, a project coordinator who happens to have good security requirements that make sense, and then weave that into your project and get it done. And I've met a lot of security people along the way who were not about getting from A to B. They were about jumping out of the bushes and putting you under security arrest, telling you how you messed up, telling you that this is wrong. And it's like, cool, well, we already know that stuff is going to be wrong. Can you just be a part of the solution? And so, like that, I would say that background, while very long-winded, that explains my approach to security now. This is how I handle all problems because of this early training.
And right now, I know that you're giving advice to so many startups. Do you think right now you can finally say, hey, there is more positive outlook towards security versus when you just started and you were saying that's when everyone hated when security was in the room? Do you think it changed today?
Thank goodness, yes. And I think it's because so many bad things, just like with anything on the human existence, like so many bad things have to happen for human beings to learn. Maybe this is not the way to do it. Maybe there's a better way. And it's just the propensity like for us to do things fast and to do things a bit sloppy. And then more and more of that being caught and more of it turning into news articles and more awareness happening. I think that wave has really helped like this newer generation of security practitioners get stuff done. But I will tell you in the early 2000s, it was nearly impossible. We had to do a lot of cajoling and persuading. I bought a lot of boxes of donuts. I bought, took people out to lunch, took people out for drinks, whatever it was that would get them relaxed and listening like, hey, this is why we're doing this in the first place. Let me not talk about what people are doing wrong, but let me just start with why are we doing this? Yeah. And then gaining a bit of that understanding. And then, people were a bit more open to it. So we had to do a lot of begging back in the day. I'd still say that nowadays there there are still some compromises and trade-offs, because even though everyone knows it's important and there's some activities that need to be done and continuously done, there's always a time component, right? Because your project needs to be done at a certain time. There's only a certain amount of resources, and there's a whole list of things to be done. And if you've been on a project before, there's always stuff that gets cut. And your responsibility as a security person is make sure that the essential security things don't get cut. And if possible, if you can pair up those security activities with other technical or non-technical activities that are like for like, and then they can be done in pairs. But yeah, it requires imagination. You can't come in to security and be a tyrant, a dictator, and be very successful for very long, because people will shut you out, or you'll be fired. Or you'll just be ineffective and like no security will take place.
As I speak today with security leaders, one of the things that I keep on hearing is that right now CISOs try to align whatever goals they have with the rest of the board of directors, right? So if you speak the same language, for example, you all want to focus on revenue, right? So sort of translating security practices, how it can affect revenue. Is this something that you use in your approach when you were a CISO, or as you speak to startups in this space?
Absolutely, because if you don't align the security requirements and the agenda you want done as a security person with business requirements, your stuff is not going to get done. People don't, in businesses, they don't do things out of the kindness of their heart. It has to do with money. Am I going to get paid for this? What are we going to get out of it? And so, really the best thing to do is, my advice to all security people is talk to your sales team. What deals are they trying to land? Especially what enterprise deals? What European deals? Anybody, Asian deals, anything where they have a pretty strict set of rules when it comes to how security and privacy is to be handled. And your sales team, they're great at talking and sharing information, and they want to pull you in. They're like, anything you can do to help me to make money, great. And so they will generally share who they're trying to go after. And bet you dollars to donuts, there will be a company in there that has pretty heavy requirements when it comes to security. And all you really need to do is find out what those requirements are. Generally, they have already been, like a piece of that has already been shared with the sales team, because the sales is looking for the list of roadblocks that will prevent them from closing that deal and getting that money. And one of those roadblocks is always going to be, our company is falling short of this enterprise company's security requirements. Let's bridge that gap. And so it's great to have a salesperson as your advocate, because it really seems like completely opposite worlds. Here's the salesperson who just wants to close deals and make money. That's what it seems like. And then here's a security person who just wants to lay down the law. But actually, both of them really do want the same thing. It's maybe for different reasons, but we want the company to be around. We want the company to get more business and move forward and be better. The better we are from a security perspective, the easier it is for your sales team to close those deals with those picky customers. But yeah, I've had great luck. My team has had great luck with it. Colleagues of mine have all had great luck as figure out, what banks, what institutions want that security thing, and then look back and see, what are we not doing? Where are we falling short? And then you could come up with a plan of like get to good, and share that with the sales team and just be like, you know what? Thanks for giving me a look ahead. You want blah, blah, blah healthcare company. We want that too. And thanks for sharing where we have gaps. I'm going to share the hit list of things that we need to do. This is how you can support us. They will 100% support you. They're not going to get in your way, right? They see you as helping to knock down one of those blockades. They're definitely going to help you.
Yeah. And then you mentioned about the gaps, right? I'm not sure how open typically companies are when it comes to sharing the gaps in the security, right? So did you find what is sort of the best strategy when it comes to matchmaking those people that, there is a vendor that like knows how to cover it, and then there is recipient that asks for it? I know I feel like there is no right answer to it, but what's your take on this?
Yeah, well, actually, I think there's two components of like a company not wanting to share vulnerability, really. Sometimes a security person has even trouble convincing its own company, hey, we do have these gaps and these gaps matter, right? And that's where your sales team can really be quite helpful. Or examples of how a company similar to yours with a similar level of maturity on the security program, but then got breached, and then we don't want to beat them. So here's what we need to do. And then when it comes down to vendor selection, if it comes down to, hey, there's a tool that we can all use, similar to SquareX, right? Like let's plug this hole. I think a good way to approach sharing your gaps with a third party, especially if you're like, I'm worried because we're not necessarily under NDA, or I just don't want people gossiping. You could just say, hey, we need to be at a better level of security maturity in this area. If it has to do with browser security, right? We're not at the level that I want it to be. And what I could do is share with you, like, this is what I would want to have. Like, over a period of a year or two, I want us to grow to this level where this is the effect it has on the organization. For browser security, there are no attacks that are able to be executed in the browser. But people are still comfortable with the browser that they're using. I haven't forced an enterprise browser on them because everybody wants to do their own thing, but everyone can still be safe. And so I think really sharing what my success criteria are with someone like you and saying, this is what I want to achieve. This is the kind of feedback that I want from users. And then can you give this to me? Kind of, I think that's a good path to go on. You don't necessarily, it's not like a Catholic confessional where you say, oh, let me tell you all the things that we're doing wrong, exactly what's broken. You probably don't want to do that. I just share where you would like to be and the effect that it has on the organization. And I think that's a safe way to do it. Yeah,
definitely. And you touched upon browser security. And today, for a lot of security leaders, they still perceive it as relatively new space. But what is your take when it comes to vulnerabilities? Because some companies look at it as an add-on. Some companies look at it as a replacement for certain technologies. What is your take on this?
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing to remember about just the security ecosystem is security practitioners, blue team, we're always at least a couple steps behind the red team, the bad guys. They're very financially motivated to get in, and as defenders are tired. We have to defend on all fronts all the time. And sometimes it's not even really clear how successful that defense has been because we really only see when pieces of it fail. And so we don't really know, hey, but we are 98.5% effective on our defense because something bad happened. And we're like, oh, we're terrible. Everything's terrible. I just feel like there's always emerging attacks. People are always thinking about, okay, it's too hard to go directly through this tech stack or this tool or this policy or whatever it might be. Let's see how we can twist it slightly and go in through the side door. So I think, as busy as security people are, it's important to pay attention to trends. And the trends often have to do with the attackers thinking it's too hard and too expensive to go through this. So what's the twist that I can make so I can sneak in, or I can get through this other side door or side window that nobody is watching because it's cheap to get through there, if it's a broken window. And when it comes to something like browser security, like I'm not an expert in that. Most security people are not either. If there is a tool out there that could be used so that I don't have to worry about that entire attack vector, I would do it. Especially if it doesn't require me having special equipment or like completely changing something over. If it is something that I can, add to something that I'm already doing and it's not disruptive to the community of users that I have, I'm going to seriously consider it. And then I probably also would look at what's the prevalence of this type of attack? How often is it happening? What's the type of damage that can be done? Is there a company fairly recently that is like our company that went through something like this? And then was the conclusion, if only they had something to protect this particular layer, it would have been stopped, or at least it would have been slowed down. And that's the way I look through it. And so you might think, okay, well, that's for browsers, that's for your laptop, that's for your network, that's for AWS. There's a million different places you can be attacked, but most security teams figure out like where the holes are and what to buy or what they should be using to plug it by doing. They'll just do like a risk-based exercise. At Segment, we did one where it was like, okay, imagine that it's going to be ridiculous blockbuster summer movie style, like explosions per minute, like very high. What is the way that the company totally gets pwned? Like, what is that D-Day for us? It's the worst day ever. And then like we describe that scenario. Oh, this is what'll happen. This is what shows up in the news and we're all embarrassed. Great. Then what's the most likely way that somebody was able to get in based on what we know that we're not doing, right? And then when you work backwards from here's the super bad news, and then here's the path that they got in because we weren't able to stop them appropriately. And then you can easily come up with, and then what do we need to change, strengthen, buy all of the above. So you need to make like a risk-based decision, but you have to have that conversation of how is this company going to die terribly and in a very embarrassing way. Start there, work backwards, and then you could see what sorts of things you need to plug. And from exercises like that, you can come up with the top 10, top 25, top X risk list. They're based on this type of this thought exercise. And this is the type of things that, CISOs and heads of security will share with the executives and the board of directors, because those folks want to know, how is all of this going to end? How is this going to ruin everyone's reputation and look really bad? And so they expect security people to go through this, catastrophizing type of exercise and get down to root cause. And so it's very freeing, because if you're the security person who does that and you come up with a beautiful top 18 list, right? Because that's all you have time for. There's a lot. And then you have, this top thing's going to happen all the way down to, here are the mitigating things that we need to do. And here's how we get rid of it. You present it clearly to the board. You present it clearly to the executives, and they go, Alexandra, this is so good, but we're not going to do any of it. Now it's out of your hands because you did your job. You combed for all that information. You put it in, perfect business context. You even served it up on a silver platter and said, this is what you need to change, what you need to buy, what you need to improve, and by when. And they were just like, that's nice. And so as soon as somebody gives you a nice pat on the back and says, good job, go do something else, it's now actually their problem, And so, as a security person, you do want to follow up and say like, hey, I am seriously not comfortable with the level of risk that y'all are carrying here. If it were me, I wouldn't want to do it, but you're the one who ultimately signs off and decides to fund it or not to fund it. I'd say, send those emails, every 6 weeks and you just see if something changes, because the business has a lot to worry about other than just security, right? They're worried about competitors eating into their space, catching up and surpassing. They're worried about, corporate espionage. They're worried about changes in the market, in the world, all kinds of existential things. And so a security person thinks the thing that I just turned in is the most important thing on earth to the CEO, to the board of directors. It's not. I mean, because at their level, they're only dealing with bad news. They're only dealing with threats. And so you are just one feeder into their threat dashboard. So if it really is that important to you and you have evidence that it's happening to companies like yours, that people are actually starting to bang on the doors and windows and get even closer, you should be regularly presenting that. Not just the one time, here's the risks, I did a great job, goodbye. It'd be like, and then here's this, and then here's another news article, and then this is what our competitor is doing that we're not doing. You want to just imagine you're on a road trip with your parents and you see all these candy stores and interesting things and you want to go, mom, dad, pull over the car. Mom, dad. You kind of have to do that. It's annoying. It's annoying being that, and it's annoying receiving it, but it's our job.
And we are just on the eve of RSA, where we're going to have a lot of this beautiful candy stores, vendors presenting
delicious.
Whatever they have. What do you think some of these loopholes that a lot of senior leaders, boards underestimate that need to be plugged in?
I guess they probably underestimate the basic stuff. What my experience with a lot of senior executive leadership and boards have been is that they have a chase the shiny thing problem. And it is, what are their friends at the country club or whatever it is that super rich people do? What are they saying when they play golf? What's the buzzword? What did I read in the Wall Street Journal? What did I hear when I was in the first class cabin flying from Paris to wherever, right? Like they're always like, ooh, I got the new hotness. And they have a tendency to over fixate on this instead of just doing the basics well. And what I mean by the basics is like, how good are you at onboarding and offboarding employees? When somebody leaves the company, how soon can you deprovision their account? All of their accounts. While they're working here, when you're provisioning them for a new system, do you just give everyone full admin access? Or do you just give them the minimum access they need to do their job? And the moment that they need to do something with elevated privileges, do you have a mechanism that, goes through like, here are the scenarios where you could get elevated privileges. Here are the people who could improve it. Great, Alexandra, you can do this thing for 1 hour, and then we're going to drop you back down to normal. And then when you get a better job at another company, like, they need to deprovision you immediately. So basics like that. And then what are your non-human identities doing, right? Because it's not just people who are mucking about in the systems, it's also machines. And so have we given like these machines the ability to do whatever they want? Are we watching their actions? Because when you log in and do things at your company, your actions are being noted. They'll know that you spent this amount of time in Salesforce and you access this file. They can see that. Are we doing that for the 3x amount of non-human accounts that are out there that are mucking around?
Yeah.
Basic stuff like if you have a physical location, do you just let anybody randomly from the street walk in, like I was able to today to the studio? No, we called each other. Do they wear badges? Do you actually like badge in? Do you do security training that is smart and catchy and contextual, topical, regularly occurring, and security training that has a little specific area for this person's job? If they're a developer, how are you teaching them secure coding training? So it's little things that that are part of the basic the structure of an entire security team that is super important. And I just see too many CFOs, CEOs, board of directors. And I don't know, and I mean, this might be offensive, but this is really how I feel. I don't know if it's a sense of like FOMO for them. I don't know if it's because they're insecure because they've been sort of out of like the day-to-day operational practitioner and they've been like leading at such a high level that they might feel so separated from what's really important, what's really going on. I mean, it could come from a need for them to feel important, smart. And, I would encourage them to put that aside. Like, at that level, you need to keep your ego in check. And it's about running the company and doing the right thing for your employees and your customers, not looking cool. Security is not a cool job. So for them to think that they can like adorn themselves with cool looking security buzzwords and phrases and projects, that does the entire like program a disservice. And so that's the one thing I would encourage them to do is stop chasing the shiny things and actually drill down, get to know your security team, the program that they're building. If you look at the program as sort of a, I don't know, like heat map with like little dots there, which of these dots are not where they're supposed to be, where, and if it's low level of maturity in whatever particular area, that's an area where there's likely to be a successful and devastating attack. I have worked with those types of folks before, and it is really tough to get them once they believe that this new thing that they read in Wall Street Journal is the most important security thing they need to be thinking of. They sort of disregard the experiences and expertise of their living, breathing, working security team for a couple lines in the Wall Street Journal. And that's been a source of unexpected disappointment. Just expect more from them,
Yeah, let's hope it's going to change in the near future. But I think it's a little bit hard for leaders, to not be so intrigued with the shiny things. I think we are all sometimes so distracted by it. It's the word AI. I feel like I go to sleep. I have dreams about AI. But you're right. And I think a lot of people even overestimate how secure the security team itself is, because if you think they're in this field and they're protected, they have I don't know what's the best analogy for it, how to say, invisible code to attackers. I don't think it's necessarily the case. And right now you're also advising so many startups. Was it difficult to transition from operations to advising startups?
Not at all. So I am in a like retired and semi-retired state. It's because I still find the industry and the people who work in the industry super interesting. And so, am I just going to play golf all the time? No, because I'm very bad at it. And I'm not really ready for full retirement. And all along, maybe for even the last 10 years since I've been in the San Francisco area, founders had been reaching out for advice anyway. And so I'd been meeting them for lunch or dinner and snacks and giving them advice. They'll show me like what they've got of their roadmap. Can I show you our demo? Can I, run some ideas past you? And, I was always happy to help. And then now I can actually dedicate myself to doing it and do it in an official capacity. It's been fun because so much of what you do as a security practitioner is selling. And these vendors who are trying to come up with a better security tech stack, they're selling, but they don't want to just manufacture something and sell something that nobody really needs. They need you as an advisor to help them understand what is the pain that security people are experiencing. What worries do they go to bed with every night? Haunted by AI. You're probably not the only one. It's a collective nightmare. And then specifically, what is it that people are worried about? And I think that, I actually had this conversation yesterday with a former boss of mine, Tito. Awesome dude. He's a founder himself now. And he said, really, the hardest thing for a founder is what is the problem you're trying to solve. Like so many people think I need to start building a solution alongside finding out what the problem is. But you need to trust that you can build the solution, but you need to get really, really clear on like, what is keeping people up at night? What is that dangerous thing that's coming to get us? And once you're very clear on that, it will be clear on what you need to build. Instead of showing up with like a generic solution saying, here you go, this probably should, you're like, no, this is not going to solve my AI nightmares, but good job on making something. It's like get very, very, very clear on what the problem is. And then be able to talk about it really compellingly and convincingly. And then, this is the same advice that I had just gotten is have that conversation then with other practitioners. Like, I've talked to a few people and it seems like the biggest pain is this. You don't have visibility into this. And then once you do, you have no control. Is that true? Yes, it's true. If it's not, then what is your biggest pain? What is it that's keeping you up at night? But yeah, I think founders in general, especially in the security world, should spend a little bit more time figuring out exactly what the pain is. Because I think some founders have some of the same issues that the senior executives and board have, which is like, it's shiny, I'm going to run after it. And that again does the security community a disservice because it's still almost always back to basics. How are you doing the basics? How effective is it? How time consuming is it for you to do it the right way? It's just the basics. And I really wish, my one wish is if I could change founders' minds, it could be like, I know it sounds boring and dumb, and you don't get to have like a flashy talk. And sometimes VCs don't like it either when you don't have flashy things to say and show. But what security teams need most of all is help us fix the basics. If you can help us put the basics on autopilot, if somehow if you want to do something with AI, the basic running of our department that would take a cloud security engineer, an application security engineer, a corporate security engineer, a GRC person, what takes them the most time, the drudgery part of their job, but it has high value, but it's got a high drudgery quotient. Like, help us with that. Because if you help us shrink down that drudgery, then it allows us to spend more time doing things that a human security person should be spending more time doing. And in my particular opinion, it is, if we got a lot of that stuff freed up, it would be spending time with whatever side of the business, so for example, if I'm an application security engineer and then I find something that helps me blow through a bunch of security design reviews, and now instead of doing 24 of them a year, I can do 144 of them a year. That means I can spend more time with developers and I can teach them how to be secure when they're coding. I can teach them how to think like me. And that's what I'd love to see. And I don't see enough of that. I see too many things in the tech stack, which are sort of like self-ornamentation. Like if your earring wanted to wear an earring, kind of like that. And I'm done with that, help us with the basics. I know it sounds dumb, but, after too many years doing this, like it literally is like, if you're running your household, the most important thing you can do, like pay your electric bill, right? Take out the trash, clean, the bathroom and the kitchen so people don't get sick, but those are the unglamorous things that people don't want to do. They'd rather decorate. But is that actually going to make the house safer? Is it going to make the house like a healthier place to be? No, it's not. And so I just want people to do the basic hygiene.
Yeah. And I think honestly, also a lot of companies, they want to have one tool that is able to solve multiple problems, right? So as a company, right, to what extent do you have a very focused approach versus a little bit more generic? Because I think each security stack is so individual that at the same time, there is one company that might be asking, hey, I just want this one little thing. And another company is asking, I want to replace 5 of these tools, right? So it becomes a little bit tricky to find that middle ground. How do you typically advise startups when it comes to, hey, how generic versus how focused you're supposed to be?
Yeah. So on the consumer side, like not necessarily the advisory side, on the consumer side, if you're within a company and your CFO tells you, can't we just have one tool that does 15 different security things? Honestly, that's coming from a place of ignorance. It's a fool's errand because a lot of what we need help with is a bit specialized, especially if it's supposed to do the job that it claims it's going to do, and it's going to save you a lot of time. It needs to have a fairly high degree of specialization, because I can't get a GRC tool that is going to also make most of my important cloud security and application security and corporate security problems disappear, because that's called magic. Yeah. And we live in this plane where there's no magic. And it feels like snake oil. It feels like, just like those ads, the clickbait ads, one weird trick to lose 20 pounds with no effort. Like, come on, like, we're human beings. We're going to fall for that stuff forever. But again, it's very disappointing to me when very experienced people fall for that. It's very frustrating for security practitioners to have to deal with, their senior leadership who's just like, just buy this thing, it'll solve everything. And it's like, wow, do you honestly, if you're a CFO and you say that to your security team, do you honestly believe that for your own discipline? Yeah. No, you do not. That's why you have to use a Windows laptop and everyone else uses a Mac. That's why you have to do your things a certain way and everyone else does it. So why is it that you get intense specialization and customization and everyone else can just be a generic push button? It's ridiculous. Yeah. So I would say, even though I said it with some anger and disdain, don't do that, But those principles are true. It's everyone has a tendency to minimize someone else's stuff, right? Your thing, I don't know anything about it. But because I'm not interested in it, it must not be that hard. It must not be that complex. When in fact, it's really quite complex. And so showing that complexity and maybe mapping it over to what that person who needs a little bit of learning, mapping it over to what they do, show as many layers deep as our stuff goes, your stuff goes too. And that's why we need these different things for these different particular areas. And so again, it is unfortunately the duty of a security person to teach. Right. Yeah. Even though we do feel put upon and frustrated, like, if somebody doesn't know, screaming at them about their ignorance is not going to help them learn. In fact, it's going to make them dig in a bit more. And so, I'm very against the whole like one weird trick thing because it's just clickbait. It's just snake oil, trickery.
That's true. You can't have one tool that is able to throw away trash, clean the house, clean the windows, everything. You have to have different tools able to do everything. And as we wrap up our podcast, what kind of advice would you give to security professionals that want to become an impact-driven leader in the next decade? And what do you suggest, at least one thing they could do today in near term?
Yeah. So at least the mindset and attitude to have is stay open and stay curious. And while that sounds like tried and true, of course, people can do that. I think it's doubly hard for security people because if you think about what the job is, it's a lot of convincing people to do things that they should already be doing. And it can wear you down. You start to feel, many security people start to feel very unappreciated, that nobody listens to them, that if they're not constantly on it, like everything's going to fall apart. And it can be exhausting. And so it doesn't leave a lot of extra headspace and like room in your heart to be open, but honestly, like that has been the thing that's gotten me through, either tough incidents or tough situations is like, this is actually a learning experience. There is something that you can learn from this and it's not a negative thing. So you don't learn people are dumb and you should never give them anything. No, not that kind of learning, but like, what is the next evolution that you can get to? And so I would also say like every security person, no matter what your role is, stay in touch with what's new. There are some security people who still haven't played around with ChatGPT or Claude or any of that stuff. And it's really what they hear and what they read and then what they spit back out. Yeah. I would say, if your company allows or, do this at home, like work with Claude, work with, ChatGPT and like make a small program that makes your life easier, and, come up with it, get it running, and then run through the iterations where you make it safer, right? Then now that it's up and running, how do we do this so that, it would be relatively impervious to being hacked? Go through that process, because that is the way people are going to be coding from now on is that, all the companies that are going to allow it are going to have a developer plus an AI companion. And together they're going to be increasing the scope and scale of what they put out. There's going to be lots of stuff. And so if the security person doesn't have an AI companion, you're going to be overrun immediately. Within the first year, you're done, you lost. And so you can have a security companion in the form of like an AI so think about ways that you can use AI to scale yourself. Whatever that high drudgery thing is, what can you have an AI do for you to lower that drudgery? And then anything that spills out from it, that, you know, that the AI can't handle, or it's like that's room for escalation, maybe that's what you handle as the human being. And then that's your highest and best use. So I would say do that right now as far as an action.
Yeah.
And then again, please stay open. Like, I know it's so hard as a security person. Like, I would say every 5 out of 7 work days are not great days. So that's not a great way to move, but don't let the job get you down. It is just a job at the end of the day. So stay open.
Yeah, stay open, be hands-on, and maybe back in the days as Ian was encouraging you to, you know, always be on the top of things, be uncomfortable.
Always be uncomfortable.
Great advice. Well, thank you so much, Coleen, for coming to our podcast. It's been amazing advice to all the practitioners, whether they're thinking to start their own company or how to grow within the security team. I think it's been incredible having you here.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it. I had fun.
Thanks.